We learn from our mistakes, even the ones we didn't know we'd made. He gestured to the shipyards below. They taught us the hardest lesson of all, never to take our achievements for granted. This time, we won't. The next week, humanity would make its first faster-than-light journey in 12,000 years. The galaxy would soon learn that some giants never truly fall. They just sleep for a while. The diplomatic vessel, Earth's Memory, dropped out of FTL on the edges of the Proxima Centauri system. Ambassador Sun Mai Choi stood on the bridge, watching the alien station grow larger in the main viewport. The massive structure gleamed like a jewel against the backdrop of stars, its crystalline surfaces refracting light in ways that made it seem almost alive. This meeting wasn't supposed to happen for another year. Humanity had planned to establish more colonies, build up their fleet further before revealing themselves to the collective. But the discovery of their observation posts in the Kuiper Belt had forced their hand. "They're hailing us," Communications Officer Park reported, his fingers hovering over the controls. Standard collective diplomatic frequencies. Sun Mi smoothed down her formal diplomatic uniform, a design that deliberately incorporated elements from humanity's recovered past. Accept the transmission. A holographic display flickered to life, showing three beings that made several bridge crew members catch their breath. The collective representatives stood nearly 3 meters tall, their iridescent skin shifting colors like oil on water. Their eyes, 4 per being, blinked in an unsettling rhythm. Unknown vessel, the central figure spoke, its translator converting the musical tones into Earth standard. "You have entered restricted space. Please identify." The being stopped abruptly, all 12 eyes widening as they took in the humans on the bridge. Sun Mi stepped forward, her voice steady. "I am Ambassador Sun Mi Choi of Earth and her colonies. We request diplomatic discussions with the Collective Council." The silence that followed was deafening. The alien skin shifted rapidly through colors, purple, green, red, before settling on a pale blue that humans would later learn indicated shock. "Earth," the leftmost being managed. "Your species is not cleared for interstellar travel. Our records indicate." "Your records," Sun Mi interrupted smoothly, "are about 12,000 years out of date." The central being's skin flushed a deep crimson. "Impossible. The protocols were clear. The restrictions." "We found Mars," Sun Mi stated simply. The words hit like physical blows, making the aliens step back. "And Europa. And all the other evidence your ancestors tried to hide." The collective representatives exchanged glances, their skin now pulsing with rapid color changes that their emotional control couldn't suppress. Fear, that was obvious even to human eyes. Fear quickly masked by diplomatic pleasantries. "We would be honored to receive Earth's representative," the central being said carefully. "Though this is most unexpected." Sun Mi allowed herself a small smile. "I imagine it is. Our vessel will dock in 30 minutes. I trust that's enough time for you to contact your superiors." The transmission ended, and Sun Mi turned to her crew. Captain Lee Ji-1, who had been silent during the exchange, stepped forward. "They're panicking," he observed. "Good," Sun Mi replied. "Panic makes people sloppy. We need information more than we need their cooperation right now." The docking procedure was smooth, almost too smooth. The collective's technology matched everything they'd learned from their recovered archives. As Sun Mi walked through the station's corridors, flanked by her security team, she noted how little had changed in 12,000 years. The collective, it seemed, didn't believe in fixing what wasn't broken. The conference room they were led to was clearly designed to impress, with views of space from every angle. More collective representatives had arrived. 7 now, each displaying varying shades of anxiety through their color-changing skin. "We represent Earth and her colonies," Sun Mi stated firmly as she took her seat. "And we have questions about events that transpired roughly 12,000 years ago." The collective representatives exchanged nervous glances. Their skin rippled with waves of deep purple, guilt, according to their recovered databases. They knew their ancestors' crimes had finally caught up with them. Ambassador, the eldest-looking being spoke, its voice carefully modulated. You must understand. The decisions made then were what? Sun Mai interrupted. Necessary. Justified. You systematically destroyed thousands of human colonies. You bombed our worlds back to the Stone Age. You erased our history so thoroughly that we had to discover it by accident. She placed a data crystal on the table, a copy of the records they'd found on Mars. We know everything. Every attack, every world that burned, every lie you told to justify it. The only question now is, what are you going to do about it? The alien skin had settled into a uniform gray, fear and resignation combined. The eldest spoke again. What do you want from us? Want? Sun Mai leaned forward. We want acknowledgement. We want reparations. But most of all, we want guarantees that what happened to us will never happen to another species. She activated a hologram showing the current state of Earth's fleet. The ships were beautiful and terrible. Designs from their past merged with modern innovations. The collective representatives' color shifted to pale white as they recognized weapons systems they thought had been erased from history. We're not here for revenge. Sun Mai continued. We're here to prevent the next genocide. Your choice is simple. Work with us to create a more just galaxy, or watch as we dismantle your Federation one system at a time. The threat wasn't idle. Earth's fleet was smaller than the collectives, but they had advantages. They remembered how to fight wars their enemies had forgotten were possible. The eldest being's skin shifted to a color Sun Mai hadn't seen before, a deep resonant gold. You've changed, it said quietly. Your species. You're not what you were. No, Sun Mai agreed. We're what you made us. The question is, are you ready to face the consequences of that decision? The meeting would continue for hours, but that moment, when humanity's representatives stared down the descendants of their destroyers, would be remembered for centuries to come. The galaxy was about to change, and the storm gathering on the horizon would reshape everything it touched. They had awakened the giants, and now they would have to live with them. The massive starship dropped silently through the darkness of space, its engines pulsing with a soft blue glow. Inside the bridge of Earth's memory, Ambassador Sun Mai watched the stars streak past through the main viewport. Each minute brought them closer to the collective's primary diplomatic station, and closer to a confrontation 12,000 years in the making. Contact in 5 minutes, Ambassador, reported Captain Lee from his command chair. His fingers tapped nervously on the armrest, betraying the tension everyone felt. Sun Mai nodded, checking her reflection in a nearby screen. The formal diplomatic uniform she wore was new, specially designed for this meeting. Its style deliberately echoed the ancient patterns they'd discovered in the Mars archives, a silent reminder of humanity's true heritage. Their sensors have detected us, Lieutenant Park announced from his station. 3 collective vessels moving to intercept. Through the viewport, Sun Mai could see them now. Sleek ships with crystalline hulls that seemed to shimmer in the starlight. They were beautiful in an alien way, but all she could think about were the recordings they'd found of similar ships burning human worlds to ash millennia ago. They're hailing us, Park said. Standard diplomatic frequencies. Sun Mai took a deep breath, centering herself. Everything hinged on these next moments. On screen, the holographic display flared to life, revealing 3 tall figures. The collective representatives stood nearly twice the height of an average human, their iridescent skin rippling with colors like oil on water. 4 eyes on each face blinked in an unsettling pattern as they studied the human crew. Unknown vessel, the central figure began and translated Earth Standard, its musical voice carrying a note of authority that suddenly faltered as it registered what it was seeing. All 12 eyes widened simultaneously. The silence stretched for several heartbeats before Sun Mai stepped forward. I am Ambassador Sun Mai, representing Earth and her colonies. We request immediate diplomatic discussions with the Collective Council. The alien skin shifted rapidly through shades of blue and purple, a sign of shock, according to their recovered archives. The leftmost being spoke, its voice wavering slightly. "This is impossible. Your species is not cleared for interstellar travel. The protocols were broken." Sun Mai interrupted smoothly. "When we discovered the truth about our past, the effect was immediate. The being's skin flushed a deep crimson, and they stepped back as one. Fear radiated from them in waves, poorly masked behind diplomatic pleasantries as they invited the human vessel to dock. The docking procedure took 20 minutes, during which Sun Mai could feel the tension building throughout the station. News of their arrival was spreading. By the time she stepped through the airlock, flanked by her security team, the corridors were lined with collective officials, their skin displaying a rainbow of emotional colors. The conference room they were led to was massive, clearly designed to impress visitors with its panoramic views of space. More collective representatives had gathered, 7 now, including some who must have transported in from nearby systems at maximum speed. Sun Mi took her seat at the gleaming table, noticing how the aliens towered over her even while seated. Their height had once been intimidating to their ancestors. Now it just seemed like overcompensation. "We represent Earth and her colonies," she stated firmly, her voice carrying across the chamber. "And we have questions about events that transpired roughly 12,000 years ago." The collective representatives exchanged nervous glances, their skin rippling with waves of deep purple. They knew their ancestors' crimes had finally caught up with them. The eldest-looking being leaned forward, its 4 eyes fixed on Sun Mi. "Ambassador," it began carefully, "you must understand the complex political situation of that era." Sun Mi placed a data crystal on the table, cutting off the excuse. The hologram that sprang to life showed scenes from their recovered archives. Human worlds burning, colonies being systematically destroyed, millions being forced back into primitive existence. "We understand perfectly," she said, her voice cold. "We understand that your civilization feared our rapid expansion. We understand that instead of engaging in diplomacy, you chose genocide. We understand that you erased our history so thoroughly that it took us 12,000 years to discover the truth." The alien skin had shifted to a uniform pale gray, fear and resignation combined, according to their archives. The eldest spoke again, its voice barely a whisper. "What do you want from us?" Sun Mi allowed herself a small smile. "First, we want acknowledgement of what was done to us. Second, we want reparations for 12,000 years of lost development. And third," she activated another hologram, showing Earth's newly rebuilt fleet, "we want guarantees that what happened to us will never happen to another species." The collective representatives stared at the ships displayed before them, their skin shifting to nearly white as they recognized weapon systems they thought had been erased from history, designs from humanity's past, improved with modern innovations. "You have rebuilt so much," one of the younger representatives said, voice filled with disbelief. "We remember more every day," Sun Mi replied. "The question is, will you help us build a better galaxy, or will we have to do it ourselves?" The threat wasn't subtle, nor was it meant to be. Humanity had risen from the ashes once before. They wouldn't be stopped again. The elder's skin shifted to a deep, resonant gold, a color Sun Mi hadn't seen before. "You've changed," it said softly. "Your species. You're not what you were." "No," Sun Mi agreed, rising to her feet. "We're what you made us. The question is, are you ready to live with the consequences of that decision?" The storm that had been gathering for 12,000 years was about to break, and the galaxy would never be the same. The red planet hung like a jewel against the black velvet of space, its surface marked by the sprawling complexes of humanity's reborn shipyards. General Ta Wan Kang stood at attention on the observation deck of Mars Command, his eyes fixed on the spectacle unfolding before him. One by one, the warships of Earth's new fleet emerged from their construction base. Their hulls gleamed with a metallic sheen that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. a property of the advanced materials recovered from their ancestors' archives. Each vessel was a perfect fusion of recovered ancient technology and modern human innovation. Fleet Status Report, Commander, Ta-1 said, not taking his eyes off the ships. Commander Min-Ju Ryu consulted her tablet. All 20 vessels reporting ready, sir. The EDS Vengeance leads the formation, followed by the Remembrance, the Justice, and the Legacy. The rest are falling into standard combat spacing. The ships moved with a grace that belied their massive size. The Vengeance alone was 3 kilometers long, its hull bristling with weapon systems that hadn't been seen in the galaxy for 12,000 years. The Collective had tried to prevent this, imposing economic sanctions and trade restrictions on Earth after the first diplomatic contact. They hadn't counted on humanity's resourcefulness or their ability to inspire others. Message from the Centaurian delegation, Minji reported. Their ships will rendezvous with the fleet in 6 hours. Tai-1 nodded. The Centaurians had been among the first to break away from the Collective's control, inspired by humanity's return to the stars. Their ships weren't as advanced as Earth's, but they brought valuable knowledge of current Collective tactics and deployments. They thought they could contain us again, he remarked to Minji. But we found allies among their oppressed worlds. History won't repeat itself. The commander's expression hardened. Like everyone in Earth's military, she had studied the records of humanity's fall. The Collective's control is slipping, sir. 3 more species declared independence last week. The alliance grows stronger every day. The Alliance of Free Worlds, a name chosen deliberately to contrast with the Collective's forced unity. What had started with Earth and the Centaurians had grown to include 15 species, all seeking to break free from millennia of subtle oppression. Sir, a junior officer called out. Priority message from intelligence. The Collective fleet in the Proxima sector is moving. Tai-1 turned to the tactical display. Red dots representing Collective warships were shifting position, forming a blockade pattern. They're trying to cut off our supply lines to the outer colonies, he observed. Minji studied the display. Standard Collective doctrine. Isolate, contain, then slowly squeeze until resistance becomes impossible. That's the problem with the Collective, Ta-1 said, a slight smile playing at his lips. They never learn new tricks. Show me the fleet's readiness status. The display shifted, showing detailed information about each Earth vessel. Green indicators across the board. Weapons, shields, engines, all operating at peak efficiency. The ship's AI systems, based on recovered designs but enhanced with modern programming, reported full combat readiness. Signal the fleet, Ta-1 ordered. Operation Remembrance begins in 30 minutes. Let's show them what humanity remembers. The plan was audacious. While the Collective expected them to defend their supply lines, Earth's fleet would instead strike at the heart of their power in this sector. The recovered archives had revealed weaknesses in Collective station designs, weaknesses they had never bothered to correct in 12,000 years. Message from the Vengeance, Minji reported. Captain Song reports all ships in position and awaiting your command. Tai-1 straightened his uniform. Send the order. Execute Operation Remembrance. All ships, Combat Protocol Alpha. The fleet moved as one, their engines flaring bright against the darkness. The formation they took was unlike anything seen in modern space combat, patterns developed by their ancestors, refined through millennia of warfare that the Collective had tried to erase from history. Sir, Minji said quietly. The Collective doesn't stand a chance, do they? Tai-1 watched as the fleet accelerated toward their jump points. They made 3 mistakes, Commander. First, they tried to destroy us instead of working with us. Second, they failed to finish the job. But their biggest mistake. He gestured to the tactical display, where signals from more Alliance ships were appearing. They showed the rest of the galaxy exactly what they were capable of. Now, everyone knows what they really are. The first ships vanished in flashes of light as they jumped to FTL. Soon, the Collective would learn that humanity hadn't just recovered their ancient technology. They'd improved upon it. The ships now heading toward their space were more advanced than anything that had existed during humanity's first rise to power. Send word to all Alliance members, Todd 1 ordered. Phase 1 begins now. Let's remind the galaxy why they tried so hard to make us forget who we were. As the last ships jumped away, leaving Mars' orbit empty once more, Todd 1 reflected on the irony of it all. The collective had spent 12,000 years maintaining their power through fear and manipulation. Now, those same tactics had created the very thing they had tried to prevent, a unified opposition led by the species they had tried to destroy. The storm was about to break, and this time, humanity wasn't facing it alone. The alarms blared through the EDS Vengeance as collective ships dropped out of FTL around Proxima Centauri. Captain Jinwoo Park stood calmly on his bridge, watching as enemy vessels materialized against the backdrop of stars. Their crystalline hulls caught the light of the system's red dwarf sun, making them look like predatory fish circling their prey. 37 collective warships detected, Combat Officer Lee reported, her hands dancing over the tactical display. Standard attack formation. They're moving to surround the colony. Jinwoo studied the enemy deployment. The collective had sent what they considered an overwhelming force, enough ships to subdue a dozen normal worlds. They expected to find a primitive human colony, defended by basic ships and outdated weapons. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Status of our fleet? Jinwoo asked, his voice steady despite the tension filling the bridge. All ships reporting ready, Captain. The Remembrance and Justice are in position behind Proxima's moon. The Legacy Group is holding at the system's edge. Colony defense systems are online and tracking targets. The captain allowed himself a small smile. The collective hadn't even noticed the ships hidden in the system's shadow zones, positions mapped out by their ancestors for exactly this kind of defense. Let them make the first move, he ordered. Let's see if they remember how to fight a real war. The enemy fleet moved with mechanical precision, following tactical doctrines that hadn't changed in millennia. Their lead ships broadcast the standard collective ultimatum: surrender or be destroyed. The message was delivered in the patronizing tone they reserved for lesser species. Send our response, Jinwoo commanded. The communications officer activated the ship's main transmitter. Across every collective vessel, screens lit up with the image of humanity's recovered archives. They showed scenes of burning human worlds, of collective ships destroying civilian colonies, of the systematic erasure of human civilization. The message ended with a simple statement: we remember. Enemy ships accelerating, Lee reported. They're launching fighters. Jinwoo nodded. Exactly as expected. Signal the fleet. Execute Maneuver Phoenix. The Vengeance's engines flared to life as the massive warship began a series of movements that defied conventional space combat doctrine. Instead of meeting the enemy head-on, the human vessels seemed to scatter in random directions. To the collective commanders, it must have looked like panic, until they realized too late what was really happening. Show them what humanity remembers, Jinwoo ordered as his fleet executed maneuvers that hadn't been seen in millennia. Ships moved in three-dimensional patterns that turned their apparent weakness into strength. The collective's formation, designed to overwhelm a centralized defense, now found itself split and isolated. First blood to us, Lee announced as the Remembrance Group emerged from behind Proxima, catching 3 enemy cruisers in a devastating crossfire. The collective ship's advanced shields, designed to stop modern weapons, proved useless against the hybrid technology humanity had developed. Ancient principles enhanced by modern innovation. Enemy fleet attempting to regroup, Tactical reported. They're falling back to secondary positions. Jinwoo watched as the collective commanders tried to adapt to a style of warfare they had never expected to face again. Their ships were technically superior in many ways, but their tactics were stale, predictable. They had spent too long fighting opponents who copied their methods. Launch Phase 2, he ordered. Let's show them how much we've learned. The Legacy Group, which had been holding position at the system's edge, suddenly accelerated to attack speed. But instead of joining the main battle, they executed a series of precise jumps, appearing and disappearing around the battlefield. Each jump lasted only seconds, but each brought devastating volleys of fire from unexpected angles. Collective fleet showing signs of confusion. Lee reported, unable to keep the satisfaction from her voice. Their formation is breaking down. On the tactical display, the elegant battle plan of the enemy was dissolving into chaos. Their attempts to counter the human attacks only exposed them to more damage. Ships designed for long-range combat found themselves in knife-fight distances where their weapons were less effective. Vessels trying to maintain formation were picked off by precisely targeted strikes. 7 enemy ships disabled. Tactical announced. 3 more showing critical damage. The rest are falling back too. Wait. The officer paused, checking his readings. Captain, they're calling for reinforcements. Jinwoo had expected this. The collective never admitted defeat. They just committed more forces until resistance became impossible. But humanity had planned for this too. Signal the Alliance fleet, he ordered. Execute Operation Sunrise. As if answering his command, dozens of new ships appeared at the system's edge. The Centaurians had arrived, along with vessels from 3 other species who had broken free from collective control. Their arrival transformed what had been a decisive victory into something more. A statement to the galaxy that humanity was not fighting alone. Enemy fleet in full retreat, Lee reported as the last collective ships jumped away, leaving their damaged companions behind. Should we pursue? Jinwoo shook his head. Let them go. Let them tell their masters what happened here. Let them explain how the primitives they tried to destroy have not only returned but evolved. The Battle of Proxima Centauri lasted less than 2 hours, but its impact would echo across the galaxy. Humanity had not just defended their colony. They had demonstrated a level of military prowess that sent shockwaves through the collective's carefully maintained power structure. As rescue ships moved to secure the disabled enemy vessels, Jinwoo looked out at the battlefield. 12,000 years ago, humanity had faced this same enemy and lost everything. Today, they had proven that history need not repeat itself, not when you remember your past and learn from it. The thunder of humanity's return had finally rolled across the stars, and its echo would shake the galaxy to its foundations. Fleet Admiral Se Jin-yoon watched the galaxy map spread across the bridge of the EDS reckoning. Points of light flickered and changed color as reports streamed in from every sector. Red markers representing collective control were rapidly turning green as system after system declared independence. Another uprising in the Orion Arm, reported Captain Min Seo Kim. The Arcturians have taken control of 3 major collective bases. Their defense fleets joined the rebels instead of fighting. Se Jin nodded, studying the tactical overlay. The Arcturians had been among the collective's most loyal enforcers for millennia. Their defection was sending shockwaves through the entire power structure. Show me the prison world reports, he ordered. New markers appeared on the map. Dozens of planets where the collective had imprisoned species they deemed too aggressive or culturally dangerous. Many of these worlds were now free, their inhabitants joining the growing alliance of free worlds. Latest intelligence from the Centaurian network, Min Seo continued. The Collective Council is in emergency session. 3 more senior members have resigned. Their fleets are refusing orders to suppress the rebellions. Se Jin moved closer to the map, his weathered face reflected in its holographic glow. After 40 years in Earth's Space Force, he had never imagined seeing this day. The Collective, which had dominated galactic politics for over 20,000 years, was falling apart from within. They feared us because we united people, Se Jin realized, speaking almost to himself. Not through force like they did, but through cooperation and mutual respect. That's why they tried to destroy us. Min Seo looked up from her console. Sir, look at the pattern, Se Jin explained, gesturing to the map. Every species that's broken away from the collective, they're not just declaring independence. They're joining the alliance. They're choosing to stand together. The evidence was clear in the data streams. Former enemies were now fighting side by side. Species that the collective had kept isolated from each other for millennia were forming trade agreements, cultural exchanges, mutual defense pacts. Message from the Arcturian High Command. A communications officer called out. They're requesting alliance support to liberate their colony worlds. The Arcturians. Min Sio's surprise was evident. They've been the collective's enforcers for thousands of years. Si Jin's expression hardened. They were slaves too. They just wore fancier chains. Send word. Full alliance support authorized. And get me a channel to their fleet commander. The main screen flickered to life, showing an Arcturian bridge. Their species resembled tall, elegant insects with iridescent carapaces and compound eyes. The commander's translator converted their harmonic speech into Earth standard. Admiral Yoon, the Arcturian said, their antennae quivering with emotion. We owe humanity an apology. For generations, we helped maintain the system that once tried to destroy your species. The past is past, Se-Jin replied firmly. What matters is what we build now, together. New alerts flashed across the tactical display. Collective fleets were mobilizing, not to attack, but to surrender. Ship after ship was dropping out of formation, refusing orders to fire on their own people. Sir, Min Sio said urgently. Priority message from Earth Command. The Collective Council has requested direct negotiations. They're offering unconditional surrender. A hush fell over the bridge. This was more than victory. It was vindication. Humanity hadn't just survived their attempted extinction. They had sparked a revolution that would reshape the galaxy. Send our response, Se-Jin ordered after a moment. The Alliance will accept their surrender, but only if they agree to face justice for all their crimes, not just those against humanity. As the message was transmitted, Se-Jin looked again at the galaxy map. The patterns of liberation were spreading like wildfire, crossing artificial boundaries the collective had maintained for millennia. Species that had been kept apart were coming together, sharing knowledge, forming bonds. You know what the collective never understood, he said to Min Sio. They thought suppressing advancement would keep everyone weak. Instead, they just made us all stronger in different ways. Now those strengths are combining. The captain nodded. They created their own worst nightmare, a galaxy that remembered how to work together. More reports flooded in. The collective's carefully maintained barriers were crumbling. Trade routes reopened. Ancient alliances were remembered and renewed. The galaxy was awakening from a long enforced slumber. Set course for Earth, Se-Jin ordered. The Council will want to coordinate the transition. We need to make sure this change brings freedom, not chaos. As the Reckoning's engines powered up, Se-Jin took one last look at the tactical display. The pattern was unmistakable now, not just victory, but transformation. The collective had spent 20,000 years trying to prevent exactly this, a galaxy united not by force or fear, but by choice and mutual respect. They had failed, and in their failure, they had proven why humanity had been such a threat to them in the first place. Because humans didn't just fight for themselves, they fought for everyone's right to be free. The price of pride was being paid, not just by the collective, but by everyone who had forgotten that true strength comes from standing together, not standing alone. The galaxy was changing, and this time it would change for the better. The grand hall of the Galactic Assembly on Mars stretched toward the stars, its transparent dome offering a view of both the red planet's surface and the endless space beyond. The architecture blended styles from 100 worlds, graceful Centaurian arches meeting sturdy Arcturian supports, all built upon foundations that echoed humanity's recovered past. President Hai-Jin Quan stood at the central podium, looking out over the assembled representatives of nearly 300 species. Former enemies sat side by side. Collective loyalists next to resistance fighters, ancient rivals sharing information and resources. The change that had swept through Axie had transformed more than just political boundaries. Dr. Jai-Yun Lee watched from her seat in the science section, hardly believing that the artifacts she'd discovered in that Martian chamber had led to this moment. 10 years had passed since she'd first decoded those ancient coordinates, yet the memory remained vivid. "The war is over," Hai-Jin began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. "But our work, our real work, is just beginning." The president gestured to the holographic display behind her, showing images from across the galaxy. New trade routes connected previously isolated systems. Former prison worlds were being transformed into centers of learning. Species that had been kept apart for millennia were sharing technology, culture, and knowledge. "We stand here today, not as conquerors," she continued, "but as partners in a new future." The collected surrender marked more than just the end of their dominion. It marked the beginning of true cooperation among the stars. Ambassador Sun Ma-Choi, who had faced down the collective in that first tense meeting, nodded from her position among the diplomatic corps. The peaceful transition of power had exceeded even her hopes. "When we first discovered our past," Hai-Jin said, "many expected humanity to seek revenge. Some even hoped for it. Instead, we chose a different path." She paused, looking directly at the former collective representatives. "We remembered our history not to repeat it, but to ensure it never happens again." The assembly hall grew quiet as she activated another display, showing the new Galactic Charter. Its first article, written in every known language, declared that no species would ever again be subjugated or held back from its potential. "The galaxy once shuddered at humanity's potential," Hai-Jin continued. "The collective feared our ability to unite others, to build bridges instead of walls. They tried to destroy us because they couldn't control us. But in doing so, they taught us our greatest strength." She gestured to the gathered representatives. "Look around you. Every species here has something unique to offer. Every culture brings new perspectives. Every world holds possibilities we've only begun to imagine. Together, we're not just stronger, we're better." Dr. Jai-Yun fought back to those first artifacts she discovered. She had feared they might lead to an apocalyptic war of revenge. Instead, they had sparked a renaissance of cooperation among the stars. "The Galactic Assembly," Hai-Jin declared, "will not rule through force or fear. We will govern through consensus and respect. Every voice will be heard. Every species will have a path to advancement. And humanity," she smiled, "humanity will serve not as conquerors or rulers, but as guardians of freedom and equality." The chamber erupted in applause. Species that couldn't physically clap found other ways to show their approval. The sound rolled through the hall like thunder, not the thunder of war, but of celebration. As the applause faded, Hai-Jin revealed the final part of the charter. "Today, we established the Remembrance Initiative. Every world that was imprisoned, every species that was held back, will receive the support they need to reclaim their potential. But more than that, we will preserve the memory of what happened, not for vengeance, but as an eternal reminder of why we must stand together." Dr. Jai-Yun felt tears in her eyes as she watched former collective enforcers embrace species they had once oppressed. The artifacts she'd discovered had indeed settled an ancient score, not through revenge, but by showing a better way. "The galaxy has changed," Hai-Jin concluded, "and we have changed with it. Let history remember this not as the day humanity triumphed, but as the day all species chose to rise together." The assembly moved into its first official session, beginning the work of building this new future. Outside the dome, ships from 100 worlds moved in peaceful formation, their crews working together to map new trade routes and exploration paths. Humanity had returned to the stars not as conquerors seeking vengeance, but as guardians ensuring freedom. They had settled the score not by repeating the cycles of the past, but by breaking them completely. As Dr. Jai-Yun watched the proceedings, she smiled. The ancient artifacts that had started this journey had led not to destruction, but to rebirth. The galaxy had indeed shuddered when humans came to settle the score, but it had been the shudder of awakening, not of fear. The age of oppression was over. The age of cooperation had begun. And this time, it would last.